The day the sky forgot its color, there's a small town tucked between quiet hills and a lake that remembers everything. A town where mornings taste like fresh bread and rain, where children chase their reflections across puddles, and where every rooftop still hums with the laughter of yesterday. It's called Willowbrook. Most people would call it ordinary, but sometimes, ordinary places hide the brightest miracles. This story begins on a morning when the sky forgot its color. The clouds hung low, as if unsure whether to cry or dream, and a boy named Cha-Cha stood at his window, believing he had nothing special to give the world. He was wrong, of course. Because the world has a way of finding its light, sometimes through a crack, sometimes through a song, and sometimes through the small hands of children brave enough to try. In Willowbrook, there lived a teacher who believed kindness could be taught like arithmetic, a girl named Suki who spoke through her violin, a painter called Choo-Choo who could turn silence into color, and a boy named Clay who hid his good heart behind bad jokes. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to change everything, the way the town looked at storms, the way it looked at itself, and maybe, the way the sky remembered its own light. This isn't a story about winning. It's about showing up when the lights go out. It's about friendship, loss, and the courage to keep dancing, even when no one's watching. So if you're listening, close your eyes, breathe, and let the rain fall. Because somewhere in Willowbrook, the stage lights are waiting to be lit again, and a handful of children are about to teach the world how to bring color back to the sky. Let's start the story. Morning broke over Willowbrook town like a held-back sigh, soft light struggling through silver clouds, roofs slick from the night's quiet rain. Inside a two-story house painted butter yellow, Cha-Cha pressed his face against the window, tracing a streak of fog with one finger. He loved mornings, they promised chances. But this one felt heavier, like the sky had misplaced its color. Downstairs, the smell of toast and warm jam wandered through the air. His mother's voice floated from the kitchen, half singing the tune she used when she wanted him to hurry. Shoes, backpack, courage, 3 things you can't forget. Cha-Cha smiled faintly and shouted, "Got it." But what he hadn't packed was confidence. Today was the first rehearsal for the Willowbrook Annual Talent Festival, and everyone at school had something brilliant planned. Everyone except him. The street outside was still damp, puddles reflecting broken pieces of the overcast sky. His sneakers splashed through one, sending tiny ripples chasing one another toward the curb. He liked that, little waves running toward a bigger sea, unaware of their size. At the corner, Choo-Choo, his best friend since kindergarten, waited with her umbrella tilted like a question mark. She had an artist's eyes, always seeing stories in puddles and shapes in clouds. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I was just thinking," Cha-Cha replied. "About?" He hesitated. "Everything." She laughed, gentle but bright. "That's a big thing to think about before breakfast." They walked together past the bakery, where the smell of sugar and cinnamon blurred into the wind. An old man waved from behind the counter. The air hummed with early sounds, broom on sidewalk, bicycle chains, the small heartbeat of a waking town. It should have been peaceful, but inside Cha-Cha's chest, something restless drummed. At school, banners were being pinned up, "Talent Fest, be the star you are." The letters glittered like promise. In the hallway, Suki practiced violin near the lockers. Notes fluttered into the air, fragile, beautiful, uncertain. She looked up nervously as they passed. "Morning," Cha-Cha said, offering a small wave. "Morning," she whispered back, bow slipping slightly. Further down, Clay juggled 3 oranges, showing off as a group of kids cheered. He was the loud one, always orbiting attention like a sun that refused to set. Cha-Cha wished he had that orbit, that natural pull. Instead, he drifted quietly through the crowd, a planet without gravity. Miss Dorothy, their teacher, was at the notice board, adjusting the list of acts. Her gentle voice anchored the hallway noise. "Remember, everyone, it's not about winning. It's about shining together." But that line only half landed on Cha-Cha's ears. Winning, yes, that was the word his heart had been trained to chase. The applause, the sparkle, the certainty that he was enough. He wanted to shine alone, but feared he might not shine at all. By afternoon, the classroom transformed into chaos, costumes hanging from chairs, music sheets scattered, paint stains blooming across the floor. Choo-Choo sat cross-legged, sketching a giant backdrop of a sun rising over hills. Her fingers danced with color, streaking gold and orange across paper. Cha-Cha watched silently, pretending to help but mostly envying how she seemed to know what she was good at. "What are you doing for the show?" she asked without looking up. He shrugged. "Haven't decided yet." "You used to dance," she reminded him. "At the spring fair. You were great." "That was different," he muttered. "It was small." Choo-Choo smiled knowingly. "Then start small again. Sometimes small things grow bigger when you care about them." He didn't answer. The bell rang, and soon the class scattered into the fading afternoon light. After school, Cha-Cha wandered through Willowbrook Park, where puddles had become mirrors and children's laughter lingered like music. Near the old oak tree stood a wooden stage, still damp from rain, the same stage where the festival would unfold in a week. He climbed onto it, shoes squeaking. The benches ahead were empty. He imagined them filled, parents clapping, friends cheering, the warm glow of lights. He tried a few dance steps, ones he remembered from last year's celebration. But his body refused to remember the rhythm. In the silence, his footsteps sounded clumsy, like words mispronounced. He stopped and sighed. "Maybe I'm not meant for this," he whispered. The wind replied by shaking loose leaves. They fell like confetti for no one. A voice startled him. "That looked good." He turned. Miss Dorothy stood at the park's edge, umbrella hooked on her arm. She had that calm expression teachers wear when they see more than you want them to. "Didn't see you there," Cha-Cha said quickly, embarrassed. "That's because you were too busy trying not to be seen," she replied kindly. "You hide when you think you might fail, don't you?" He stared at the wet boards under his feet. "It's easier than looking stupid in front of everyone." Miss Dorothy climbed onto the stage beside him. "Do you know what this wood remembers?" she asked. He frowned. "What?" "Every footstep that ever touched it. Every wobble, every bow, every mistake. The stage keeps them all." "But do you know what the audience remembers?" Cha-Cha shook his head. "The courage. The moment someone steps forward despite fear." She laid a hand on his shoulder. "Don't aim to be perfect. Aim to be present." Then she left, her umbrella tapping softly on the cobblestones. Evening folded over the town. Streetlights flickered to life like patient stars. Cha-Cha sat on the edge of the stage, shoes swinging above puddles that reflected the dim amber glow. He thought about what it meant to be present, to show up, even when uncertain. Maybe that was harder than winning. He reached into his bag, found his old headphones, and played a song he hadn't heard in months, a rhythm that used to make him dance without thinking. Slowly, his foot tapped. His fingers followed. The melody filled the park, echoing faintly off empty benches. Under the streetlight, he began to move. Hesitant at first, small steps, then broader arcs, until movement became emotion. Each turn dissolved a layer of doubt. For the first time all day, the world shrank to the size of a heartbeat and a song. And then, he slipped. The puddle caught him like a cold hand. He sat there, drenched and stunned, and then, because he could, he laughed. It wasn't the laughter of triumph. It was the laughter of someone realizing the world hadn't ended after a fall. The next morning, sunlight returned, golden and bold. Willowbrook looked different, as if overnight the town had remembered its own palette. Birds called from wires, bakery bells chimed, and for the first time in weeks, Cha-Cha's reflection in the window smiled back without forcing it. He arrived at school early. The courtyard was quiet except for the hum of sprinklers. Choo-Choo arrived a few minutes later, carrying paintbrushes. "You're early," she said, surprised. I needed to see the stage again, he replied. I think I'll dance after all. Her grin spread like color across a blank canvas. I knew you would. They walked inside together. The hallway felt warmer, the banner brighter. Clay passed by, tossing an orange into the air. You joining the festival, Cha-Cha, he teased. Yeah, Cha-Cha answered simply. Maybe you can juggle beside me. Clay blinked, caught off guard. Then he smiled. Maybe I will. Something subtle shifted in the air, a friendship forming, the kind built not on competition but courage shared. By the time rehearsal started, sunlight pooled through the classroom windows, catching dust motes that looked like tiny planets in orbit. Miss Dorothy clapped her hands. All right, stars, she said. Let's begin. Music echoed. Laughter followed. Cha-Cha's turn came last. He stood center stage, heart racing. The same song from the night before played softly from the speakers. He closed his eyes, let the rhythm find him, and stepped forward. One move, then another. Not perfect, real. For 3 minutes, the world melted into sound and motion. The class watched in silence until the last beat faded. And then, as Cha-Cha caught his breath, they burst into applause, not because he was flawless, but because he had dared. Miss Dorothy smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. See, she whispered. The sky never really loses its color, it just waits for someone brave enough to dance beneath it. That night, as Cha-Cha walked home beneath a sky alive with sunset, he finally understood what she meant. The world doesn't hand you confidence, it offers you moments to build it. He looked up, saw the clouds tinted in orange and rose, and whispered to himself, I'll keep showing up. Somewhere between the lingering notes of that promise, Willowbrook's sky remembered its color completely. By the end of the week, Willowbrook had settled into that strange hush before a big event, like the world was holding its breath. Posters of smiling children and golden stars fluttered on lampposts. The words Talent Festival tomorrow 6 p.m. were written in thick red paint across the community board outside the bakery. Inside Willowbrook Elementary, the excitement buzzed loud enough to drown the school bell. Cha-Cha's dance practice had become the talk of the hallway. Not because it was perfect, but because it was different. He danced with the kind of honesty that made other kids forget to whisper. Miss Dorothy had noticed it too. When you dance, she told him quietly that morning, you remind people that bravery looks a little like motion. Cha-Cha grinned shyly, not quite sure what bravery was supposed to feel like, only that it made his chest warm and shaky all at once. But that warmth was about to be tested. After lunch, Miss Dorothy clapped for silence. Class, we have a new student joining us today. Please welcome Suki Tanaka. A girl stepped through the doorway holding a violin case almost bigger than herself. Her hair was tucked into 2 braids, her uniform slightly creased from travel. The moment she bowed politely, the classroom erupted into murmurs. Where's she from? Whispered Clay. Is that a real violin? Asked Taku, leaning too far forward. Suki nodded shyly, eyes darting toward the floor. Miss Dorothy gestured. Suki's family just moved here from Kyoto. I expect everyone to help her feel at home. We're a team, remember? Cha-Cha raised his hand first. She can sit next to me, Miss Dorothy. Suki smiled, small, uncertain, like a door cracking open just enough for sunlight to peek through. At first, everything seemed fine. Suki spoke little but listened to everything. Her accent made her English sound like poetry, soft edges, careful pauses. During the art period, she drew delicate mountains in charcoal while others doodled cartoons. Choo-Choo admired them instantly. They look like they're breathing, she said. Suki tilted her head. Mountains always breathe. You just have to watch long enough. It was the first full sentence she spoke that day. And in that moment, Willowbrook gained another quiet heartbeat. Rehearsal after school was chaos, juggling clubs, piano keys, half-painted props. The gym smelled of glue and energy drinks. Cha-Cha practiced his routine at the far end of the room. Suki unpacked her violin near the bleachers, carefully polishing the strings before tuning. The first note she played floated like a silver thread through the air, so pure that even Clay stopped juggling mid-throw. Everyone turned. The melody swirled around them, bright and haunting, then ended on a sigh. "Whoa," someone whispered. "She's amazing." Cha-Cha clapped first, but Clay's grin twisted. "Yeah, if only we were doing a classical concert, not a fun festival." A few kids laughed, not cruelly, but enough to bruise the silence. Suki's bow trembled. She lowered the violin. Miss Dorothy's voice cut through gently. "Art has many faces, Clay. Let each one speak." The laughter faded, but the damage lingered. Suki packed her instrument quickly and slipped out before anyone could stop her. When the last bell rang, clouds had gathered again, heavy and thoughtful. Cha-Cha saw Suki walking alone down Maple Street, violin strapped to her back, head bowed against the drizzle. He hesitated, then ran to catch up. "Hey! Wait up!" She didn't slow until he appeared beside her, panting. "You walk fast." "I didn't want to cry in front of them," she said flatly. Cha-Cha winced. "Clay's just loud. He doesn't mean things sometimes." "Words still mean things," Suki replied. Rain started falling harder, each dropping a punctuation mark on the pavement. They ducked beneath the awning of the corner library. The smell of wet paper and rain-washed earth filled the air. "I liked your music," Cha-Cha said. "It sounded like sunrise." Suki blinked. "Sunrise?" "Yeah. Like when the light doesn't ask permission, it just happens." A small smile tugged at her mouth. "You speak funny." "So do you." They both laughed, and the sound startled the rain for a heartbeat. Inside the library's reading room, the librarian waved them in with a smile. Shelves stretched like quiet forests. They wandered through aisles until Suki stopped at a book of world folk tales. "Do you ever read stories about yourself?" she asked suddenly. Cha-Cha frowned. "You mean like being the hero?" She nodded. "In my old school, we read stories where kids from Japan saved cities or climbed dragons. Here, I only see stories about faraway kids who speak perfect English." Cha-Cha thought about it. "Maybe it's our turn to write new ones." Suki looked up, surprised. "You write?" He shook his head. "I dance." "But maybe dance can tell a story too." Something sparked then, a shared hunger to belong and to create. The next morning the festival stage was being built in the schoolyard. Planks thudded, ropes creaked, children carried banners through drizzle. Suki arrived late, breathless. Her violin case was missing. "I left it here yesterday," she gasped. "Under the bleachers." They searched everywhere, behind curtains, beneath benches, even in the lost and found box. Nothing. Panic trembled in Suki's voice. "It's from my grandmother. It's the only thing I have left from Japan." Miss Dorothy promised to ask the staff, but her worried eyes said she doubted it would be found soon. Cha-Cha clenched his fists. The memory of her music still echoed in his chest. He couldn't stand the thought of that silence. That evening, after everyone left, he returned to the gym alone. The floor smelled faintly of polish and dust. He crawled under the bleachers, flashlight trembling. At first, nothing. Then, tucked behind a stack of stage boards, he saw the corner of a case, mud-streaked, scratched, but whole. He pulled it out, heart pounding. Relief flooded him, but so did confusion. Someone had clearly tried to hide it. Footsteps echoed behind him. Looking for treasure? Clay stood in the doorway, hands in pockets. Cha-Cha froze. "Did you hide this?" Clay's smirk faltered. "I was just playing around. I didn't think she'd freak out." "You took her grandmother's violin," Cha-Cha said quietly. "That's not a joke." Clay looked away. I was gonna give it back. Then give it back now, Cha-Cha said. For a long second, Clay didn't move. Rain hammered the windows, filling the silence. Finally, he kicked at the floor and muttered, "Fine." Together they wiped the mud off the case. Cha-Cha carried it carefully like something sacred. The next day, Willowbrook woke to thunder. The festival might be cancelled, posters flapped loose in the wind. But inside the gym, the students gathered anyway, determined to practice one last time. Cha-Cha handed Suki her violin. She gasped. "You found it." Clay helped, Cha-Cha added quickly. Her eyes softened. "Thank you, both." Clay looked at the floor. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "It was stupid." Suki nodded, forgiveness shining like dawn. Then she lifted the violin and began to play. The first note cut through the thunder, clear and bright. Cha-Cha felt the rhythm bloom in his chest. Without thinking, he stepped forward and danced, not the routine he'd practiced, but something new, guided by the melody. Rain battered the roof, thunder rolled like drums. The others joined in, Choo-Choo waving paintbrushes like ribbons, Taku spinning a chair, laughter mingling with the storm. Miss Dorothy stood at the doorway, watching. The power flickered, and for a moment the only light came from lightning, washing their faces in silver flashes. It was wild and unplanned and beautiful. When the song ended, silence fell heavy and perfect. Outside, the storm began to ease. Miss Dorothy clapped once, then again, tears bright in her eyes. "That," she said, "is what the festival is for." By evening, the rain had passed. Streets shimmered. Willowbrook smelled of wet earth and second chances. Cha-Cha walked home beside Suki and Clay, puddles splashing around their shoes. They didn't talk much, words felt too small. But something invisible had mended between them, an understanding born in thunder. As they reached the crossroads, Suki looked up. "The sky's listening," she said. Cha-Cha followed her gaze. Clouds parted, revealing a faint ribbon of rainbow curling above the school roof. He smiled. "Maybe it liked our music." Clay chuckled. "Then we should play louder next time." They laughed, and the sound carried through the damp streets, light, forgiving, full of promise. That night, from his window, Cha-Cha watched rainwater glitter on the pavement under a lamplight. Tomorrow's festival would arrive with sunlight and nerves, but for now the world felt still. He wrote 3 words in his notebook before bed: show up. Shine together. Outside, Willowbrook's sky, still a little bruised from the storm, began to remember its color again. The morning of the Willowbrook Talent Festival arrived bathed in a fragile kind of gold. The town square glimmered as if it had spent all night polishing itself for what was coming. Bunting fluttered, vendors set up lemonade stalls, and children in costumes darted through the park like living confetti. For weeks, every laugh, every song, every drop of paint had led to this moment. Cha-Cha could feel the pulse of it beneath his skin. He stood before the mirror backstage, hands trembling over his costume, white shirt, black suspenders, a tiny sparkly ribbon sewn by Choo-Choo. His reflection stared back with wide, nervous eyes. "Breathe," he whispered to himself. "Just breathe." Behind him, voices collided, Clay arguing with the lighting crew, Suki tuning her violin, Choo-Choo painting one last stroke on the backdrop. Miss Dorothy moved through it all like a calm wind. 5 minutes to curtain, she called, and the room answered with a collective flutter of panic. The auditorium filled fast. Rows of parents and townsfolk buzzed with chatter. The mayor himself sat in the front row, adjusting his tie. Cha-Cha peeked through the curtain. His mother waved from the 3rd row, eyes glistening with pride. He turned to Suki. "You ready?" She nodded, violin tucked under her chin. "Are you?" He smiled, uncertain. "Ask me when it's over." Clay rolled his shoulders. "Remember, if we nail this, Miss Dorothy promised pizza for everyone." Choo-Choo grinned. "Then dance like you're starving." They laughed, and that laughter steadied them. The lights dimmed. The stage manager whispered, "Places." The curtain rose. Their performance began like sunrise, soft, deliberate, beautiful. Suki's violin carried the melody, clear as morning air. Cha-Cha's dance followed, a fluid, full of breath. Clay juggled in rhythm, his earlier arrogance replaced with quiet focus. Choo-Choo's painted backdrop unfurled behind them, a mountain blooming under a sky of blended blues. The audience leaned forward. For the first time, every heartbeat in Willowbrook seemed to sync to the same rhythm. Then, a snap. A sudden burst of light. A sound like glass breaking. The stage flickered once, twice, and went completely dark. Gasps rippled through the hall. The music stuttered to silence. Someone shouted from the back, "Power's out." Emergency lights failed to come on. Only the faint glow from the exit signs painted red halos on the walls. The children froze, silhouettes caught between wonder and fear. Backstage, Miss Dorothy grabbed a flashlight. "Everyone stay calm," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. The generator had failed. The rainstorm 2 nights ago must have flooded the lines. The mayor muttered about postponing. Parents rose, whispering. The magic that had built for weeks began to unravel into nervous noise. Cha-Cha's heart sank. He could feel it, the collective disappointment spreading like ink. Not now, he thought. Not when we finally found our rhythm. Then he heard Suki's trembling whisper beside him, "The crowd's leaving." He peeked through the curtain again, some parents gathering coats, murmurs of such a shame. The fear that had once been small now screamed inside him, "It's over." And then, something unexpected. A single, quiet note. Soft, unsure, but real. Suki had lifted her violin in the darkness. Her bow traced across the string, sending a faint, silver thread of music through the air. Every head turned. The sound grew, blooming despite the dark. Cha-Cha felt something ignite inside him, the rhythm calling his name again. He stepped forward into the faint glow of the exit light. "Play," he whispered to her. "I'll follow." She nodded. The next notes unfurled, slow and trembling, like a heartbeat rediscovering courage. Cha-Cha moved. Bare feet now, he'd kicked off his shoes without thinking. The wooden stage felt alive beneath him, warm with vibration. His silhouette swayed, turned, leaped. No spotlights, no glitter, only the music, the motion, the sound of breath. One by one, others joined. Clay tossed oranges that caught the dim light like tiny suns. Choo-Choo stepped forward with a paintbrush and began tracing lines across a tall white sheet, her strokes guided by sound rather than sight. Miss Dorothy, realizing what was happening, whispered to the technician, "Open the stage doors." Moonlight spilled in. It wasn't bright, but it was enough. The audience stopped leaving. Someone whispered, "Look." Under the soft wash of moonlight, the children performed as if the world were made just for them. The absence of light stripped away perfection, all that remained was truth. Suki's melody grew fierce, no longer fragile but brave. Cha-Cha's movements matched her pulse. Together they built something raw and unforgettable. Halfway through, thunder rumbled in the distance, echoing like a drumline. The music rose to meet it, defiant. Then, just as suddenly, the power flickered back. Floodlights blazed on, dazzlingly white. Gasps erupted again, this time in awe. The children didn't stop. They danced through the returning brightness, blinded but fearless. When the final note faded, the silence that followed felt sacred. And then, applause. Roaring, endless, thunderous applause. Not polite clapping, but the kind that pours straight from the heart. Miss Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "They made their own light." Backstage later, as medals were handed out and photos taken, the children buzzed with disbelief. "You were incredible," Choo-Choo told Suki, hugging her. Suki's smile trembled. "I was so scared." Clay grinned. Same. I thought the oranges would vanish in the dark. Cha-Cha laughed softly. You all looked like stars anyway. Then he fell quiet, staring at his hands, still shaking, still alive with rhythm. I almost gave up when the lights went out, he admitted. But maybe that's when I was supposed to start. Miss Dorothy overheard and placed a hand on his shoulder. Sometimes, she said, life cuts the power just to remind us where the real light comes from. As the festival wound down, the children were sent home early. But Miss Dorothy stayed behind to lock up. The power outage had caused more damage than anyone realized. Electrical boards shorted, cables melted. The next morning, the principal announced the school auditorium would be closed for months. The news hit like another crack of thunder. Their stage, was gone. Cha-Cha stared at the cordoned-off building that afternoon. Red tape crossed the door like a wound. What do we do now? He whispered. Find another stage, Suki said quietly. Where? She looked toward the park, the same place where he had first practiced alone weeks ago. Everywhere is a stage if we bring the light. He wanted to believe that, but something ached deeper. The performance had awakened a hunger he didn't yet understand, the need to keep telling stories, to feel that connection again. That night he sat by his window, listening to rain tapping against the glass. The power flickered again, and his room plunged into darkness. This time, he didn't flinch. He stood, closed his eyes, and began to move. Each gesture painted shapes into the dark. The world outside could lose its lights 1,000 times, but something inside him had switched on for good. 2 days later, a letter arrived for the group, written in looping cursive on Willowbrook Town Hall paper. The mayor himself had seen the blackout performance and wanted to invite the children to perform again, this time outdoors, under open skies, during the midsummer fair. Miss Dorothy gathered them in the classroom and read the letter aloud. The room erupted in cheers. But Cha-Cha noticed Suki's quiet expression. You're not happy? He asked later. She hesitated. My father got a new job. We might move again next month. The words landed like a stone in his stomach. Just when everything had started to make sense, she might vanish. He didn't know what to say. So he said the only thing that felt true. Then we make this one count. Suki nodded, eyes shining. Promise. They shook hands, and in that simple motion a pact was born, to make something unforgettable, even if it had to end. That evening, the children gathered at the park to plan. The sun dipped low, scattering rose and amber across the lake. Fireflies blinked like tiny lanterns. Choo-Choo spread sketches on a blanket, Clay balanced apples on his knuckles, Suki plucked quiet notes that blended with the rustle of trees. Cha-Cha looked at them, his friends, his family in all but name, and felt a surge of emotion too large to fit inside him. For the first time, he understood what Miss Dorothy meant when she said, the courage to be present. It wasn't about the spotlight or trophies. It was about this, being together, fragile and brave in the same breath, lighting the dark with their own small fires. Somewhere behind the clouds, thunder muttered again, as if reminding them that storms never truly leave, they just change shape. Cha-Cha smiled at the sound. Tomorrow will bring another test. But tonight, Willowbrook shimmered, and the children who had danced through darkness sat beneath the sky, planning how to turn even shadows into music. 3 weeks after the blackout performance, Willowbrook found its rhythm again, children spilling from classrooms, bicycles racing through the square, the smell of bread and chalk mixing in the afternoon air. But inside Cha-Cha, something restless kept beating like a drum that wouldn't fade. The midsummer fair was just days away, and the group had been invited to perform again, this time outdoors, under the open sky. Everyone should have been thrilled. Instead, a quiet tension lingered, like thunder hiding behind blue clouds. Suki sat at the edge of the playground, tracing circles in the dust with her shoe. Her father's letter lay folded in her pocket, transfer confirmed. New school. New city. End of month. Every time she read it, the words felt heavier. When Cha-Cha joined her, she quickly folded it away. He didn't have to ask, he already knew. "You're still leaving?" he said softly. She nodded. 2 weeks. The words landed between them like a clock ticking louder than anything else. He kicked at the dirt. "Then this show, it's our last one together." Her smile was brave but small. "Let's make it enough." Rehearsals took place at the park amphitheater near the lake, a wide wooden platform surrounded by weeping willows. Sunlight filtered through their branches like liquid gold. Clay set up his juggling pins, Choo-Choo hung ribbons between trees, and Miss Dorothy directed them with her gentle precision. But even she could feel the strain underneath, the way Cha-Cha missed beats, how Suki's notes cracked halfway through a phrase. "Something's off," she said finally, clapping her hands for a break. "Everyone, take 5." As the others wandered off for lemonade, she approached Cha-Cha. "You look far away today." He hesitated. "She's leaving." Miss Dorothy nodded. "I know. I don't want to dance if she's not here." Her eyes softened. "Then dance so she'll never forget you were." The words hit him like wind through leaves. He didn't answer, but when the break ended, his steps were sharper, each movement carved with urgency, like he was trying to write something permanent on air. Suki noticed. She played harder, bow slicing through the quiet. Their eyes met mid-rehearsal, and for a heartbeat the music turned into conversation, everything they couldn't say out loud translated into rhythm and breath. When the piece ended, neither of them moved. The whole park had gone still. Miss Dorothy clapped once, smiling through misty eyes. "Now that," she whispered, "is what love looks like when it learns to be brave." That evening, Suki found Cha-Cha sitting by the lake, shoes off, feet dangling above the rippling water. The reflection of the moon danced beside his own. "You shouldn't rehearse this late," she said, sitting next to him. "Miss Dorothy will worry." He shrugged. "I like it here. It's quiet. The lake listens better than people." She laughed softly. "Back home, we had a bridge near my grandmother's house. Every night she said wishes could cross it if you whispered them right. Did yours ever come true?" She looked down. "Sometimes. The small ones. The big ones take longer." Cha-Cha pulled a pebble from the shore and skipped it across the surface. "What are you wishing for now?" "That I could stay," she admitted. He swallowed. "Then I'll wish for the same thing. Maybe 2 wishes travel faster than 1. They sat in silence, the night humming around them. Fireflies blinked like floating sparks. The world felt suspended, half dream, half truth. The next day brought wind. The willow branches bent low, whispering secrets to the ground. The town's electricians worked to ensure there'd be no repeat of the blackout, but dark clouds gathered again on the horizon. During lunch, Clay jogged up to Cha-Cha. "Mayor says if it rains, we will move the show inside the community hall." "That place is tiny," Choo-Choo groaned. "Half the town won't fit." "Better small audience than soaked instruments," Clay replied, juggling an apple between sentences. Cha-Cha stayed quiet. Inside, a different storm brewed. He'd spent nights replaying the moment Suki told him she was leaving. Each rehearsal felt like a countdown he couldn't stop. He tried to dance harder, louder, brighter, but it only made the fear louder too. What if the final performance failed? What if the only memory she carried of Willowbrook was a mistake? That afternoon, during practice, he stumbled mid-spin and crashed into a prop stand. Paint splattered across the floor. The music stopped. Suki rushed over. "Are you okay?" He pushed himself up, jaw tight. "I'm fine." But Miss Dorothy's voice was firm. "Take a break. Sit down before you break something that can't be fixed." He sat under the willow tree, anger and shame twisting inside him. When he looked up, the sky had turned steel gray. Rain began to fall that night, slow at first, then steady. The rehearsal ended early, everyone scattered under umbrellas. Only Cha-Cha stayed behind, drenched and trembling. Suki returned minutes later, holding a small paper umbrella painted with cherry blossoms. "You'll catch a cold." "I already have one," he muttered. "It's called sadness." She laughed, then stopped when she saw his face. "I don't want you to go," he said finally. "It feels like every time I find something good, life decides it's temporary." Suki looked away, rain streaking her cheeks like tears. "You think I want to leave? Then don't. It's not my choice." Thunder rolled across the lake. The umbrella shuddered in her hand. "I'll forget how to dance without you," he whispered. She stepped closer, placing the umbrella between them like a fragile roof. "Then don't forget the music. It's half yours now." They stood like that for a long time, two small silhouettes beneath a storm, sharing what words could never repair. The following morning, Miss Dorothy found a note on her desk written in Cha-Cha's messy handwriting, "Taking a walk to clear my head. I need to find the bridge Grandma Suki talked about." Her heart skipped. Outside, the storm had returned heavier than before. Wind tore through the trees, bending them low. She grabbed her coat. "Clay, Choo-Choo, Suki, come with me. He's at the lake." Rain slapped against their faces as they ran. The wooden bridge curved across the lake like a question mark. Through the mist, they spotted a small figure standing in the middle, arms out, head tilted toward the sky. "Cha-Cha!" Suki shouted, voice breaking through thunder. He turned, hair plastered to his forehead. "I'm not crazy," he called back. "I just wanted to see if wishes could cross this bridge too." "Then wish here," she pleaded, stepping onto the slick boards. "Not out there." A flash of lightning illuminated the lake, bright, blinding. The echo that followed felt like the world's heart splitting. Rain pounded harder. The bridge creaked under their weight. Suki reached him just as a wooden plank gave way beneath her foot. She stumbled. Without thinking, Cha-Cha grabbed her wrist. For a terrifying second, everything froze, water below, storm above, their hands the only link between the two. "Don't let go," she cried. "Never." With Clay's help, they pulled her back onto solid ground. Everyone collapsed onto the wet boards, gasping, laughing, crying all at once. Suki looked at him, shaking. "You idiot," she whispered, half angry, half relieved. He laughed through tears. "Guess my wish already came true." "What wish?" "That I'd have something worth holding on to." The next day dawned soft and gray, the storm finally spent. Willowbrook smelled of wet leaves and renewal. The fair committee debated canceling the event, but Miss Dorothy refused. "These kids danced through darkness once," she said. "They'll do it again, rain or shine." By afternoon, the clouds began to lift. The stage crew dried the wooden floor with towels. Families arrived carrying umbrellas, just in case. Cha-Cha and Suki stood side by side backstage, silent. She pressed something into his hand, a small wooden charm shaped like a bridge. "For courage," she said. "And for remembering." He slipped it into his pocket, eyes bright. "Then let's build another one, on stage." As dusk settled, lanterns flickered on across the park, glowing amber against the fading sky. The amphitheater filled with the hum of anticipation. Every seat taken, every breath held. Backstage, the children lined up. Clay cracked his knuckles, Choo-Choo adjusted her paint ribbons, and Suki tuned the violin one last time. Miss Dorothy gathered them in a circle. "Whatever happens tonight," she said, voice trembling with pride, "remember the light you made that night in the dark? It wasn't the electricity. It was you. Find it again." They nodded. Cha-Cha squeezed Suki's hand once before stepping toward the stage curtain. The sound of the crowd swelled, like an ocean about to break. He looked up at the twilight sky, colors bleeding into one another. The same clouds that had once drowned their show now glowed faintly pink, forgiving. "Ready?" Suki whispered. He smiled. "Let's make the sky remember us." The curtain began to rise. Music gathered at the edge of the wind. And the world, once again, held its breath. The world held its breath. Lanterns shimmered like captured fireflies around the open-air stage. The last blush of dusk burned behind the hills, turning the lake into a sheet of molten silver. A hush swept through the crowd, parents, neighbors, the mayor, strangers drawn by rumor of a miracle performance. And behind the curtain, 5 children waited. Miss Dorothy's voice was a steady pulse. "No matter what happens out there," she said, "remember, you already changed this town once. Do it again." Cha-Cha felt his heartbeat in his fingertips. Suki stood beside him, violin tucked under her chin, braid glistening with the last drop of sunset. He thought of every moment that had led here, the blackout, the rain, the bridge, the promise. All of it converged now into a single fragile truth: this might be their last dance together. The curtain lifted. The opening note floated into the air, soft, trembling, but clear. Suki's bow drew it out like thread from a wound. Choo-choo spun across the stage with paint-streaked ribbons, leaving trails of color that caught the lantern light. Clay juggled oranges that glowed like miniature suns. And then Cha-Cha stepped forward. His first movement was hesitant, a breath that forgot itself. The wooden boards still smelled faintly of rain. He closed his eyes, found Suki's rhythm, and let it pull him in. The crowd disappeared. He danced not for applause, but from everything he couldn't say, from the ache of goodbye and the beauty of having something worth losing. Halfway through the piece, a gust of wind rushed down from the hills, scattering petals and programs into the air. Lantern flames trembled. The audience gasped. Miss Dorothy looked up. Clouds had gathered again, bruised and restless. The storm hadn't finished its story. Thunder murmured. A string of lights flickered and went out, but this time no one moved to stop the show. Suki's eyes met Cha-Cha's. "Keep going." He nodded once. Rain began to fall, soft needles of silver cutting through the music. Each drop tapped against Suki's violin, against his face, against the drum of their joined heartbeat. They didn't stop. They became the storm. A flash of lightning split the horizon, startling a shriek from the youngest children in the crowd. The mayor rose, shouting for tents, but Miss Dorothy raised her hands. "Wait." On stage, the rain turned the floor slick. Cha-Cha spun, slipped, and fell hard. A collective gasp tore through the air. Suki froze mid-note. He lay there, chest heaving, staring at the night above him. For a heartbeat he thought he'd failed, that the world would remember only the fall. Then he saw something, raindrops shattering on the boards, bursting into tiny prisms of color. The same rainbow that had once followed the storm now lived inside every drop. He laughed. Slowly, he rose. Every muscle screamed, but he stood. The audience began to clap, tentative at first. Suki wiped rain from her eyes and began to play again, louder, faster. Cha-Cha found the beat and moved with it, pain and joy folding into one unstoppable rhythm. The storm roared back its applause. From the wings, Choo-Choo and Clay joined, spinning and tossing ribbons that caught raindrops like fire. The colors blurred into motion, painting the air itself. Suki's melody climbed higher, reaching a note so pure it seemed to tear the sky open. Lightning flashed again, not violent, but radiant, illuminating every face in the crowd. And there it was, the rainbow, faint but real, forming behind them in the rain. Gasps rippled through Willowbrook. Cha-Cha reached out his hand towards Suki, and she stepped forward, their movements echoing the night at the bridge. Only this time, no one fell. This time, they crossed. Together they leapt through the downpour, arcs of motion drawn against the storm, building their own bridge of light. The music slowed. The rain softened. The final chord trembled between earth and sky. Cha-Cha knelt, breath ragged. Suki lowered her violin, bow shaking in her hand. For a long moment, silence ruled. Then the audience rose, not cheering, not clapping yet, just standing as if afraid to break the spell. One by one, they lifted umbrellas, holding them open above the stage. Dozens, then hundreds, blooming like flowers against the drizzle. Miss Dorothy stepped forward, tears running freely. "Look," she whispered. "The whole town is holding up the sky for you." Applause followed, wild, unending. Cha-Cha felt Suki's hand slip into his. "You did it," she said. "We did," he wanted to answer, but the words caught in his throat. So he just squeezed her fingers instead. When the lights dimmed and the crowd drifted away, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet grass and sweet smoke from the food stalls reopening. The lake beyond the stage mirrored the faint glow of lanterns, a trembling reflection of all that had happened. Backstage, children hugged, laughed, wept. Miss Dorothy handed out towels and whispered praise that felt like prayer. Suki sat alone for a moment, wiping her violin. Cha-Cha joined her quietly. "You should keep that," she said, nodding toward the wooden charm in his pocket. He smiled. "Only if you promise to take this." He opened his hand. Inside lay a folded paper crane, edges soaked from the rain. "For safe travels. So you don't forget how to fly." Her eyes filled. "I'll come back," she said. "Someday." He shook his head gently. "No promises. Just memories." She looked out at the lake. "Then let's make sure this one doesn't fade." They stood there, side by side, watching lightning blink far away, not a threat now, but a heartbeat at the edge of the world. A week later, Suki left Willowbrook. Cha-Cha woke to find a letter under his doorstep, sealed with a crimson thread. Inside was a single line written in careful handwriting: "When the sky forgets its color, dance until it remembers." Folded inside was a photograph, the group on stage beneath the rainbow, faces tilted upward, eyes alight. Behind them, faint but visible, the arc of color bridged earth and heaven. He pressed the picture against his chest and closed his eyes. Outside, the world was ordinary again, kids riding bikes, vendors shouting prices, pigeons scattering crumbs, but inside, everything had changed. He went to the lake that evening. The water was still, unbroken except for his reflection. He lifted one foot, let the other follow, and began to dance. No audience, no stage, no spotlight. Just the wind and the sound of his own heartbeat echoing across the water. And somewhere far away, in another city perhaps, a girl might have lifted her violin and played along. Miss Dorothy watched from a distance, hands folded. The boy she'd once coaxed onto the stage now moved like the world itself was his partner. She smiled through tears. Sometimes, she thought, the hardest lessons aren't the ones we teach, they're the ones we witness. Willowbrook would talk for years about the night the lights went out, the storm returned, and a handful of children taught them how to keep shining. But for Miss Dorothy, the story wasn't about storms or courage or art. It was about the moment a child realized that the light he'd been chasing was never out there, it was always inside him. As dusk melted into night, the sky blushed faintly, a ghost of the rainbow returning. Cha-Cha spun once more, arms open, raindrops turning to sparks in the dying sun. From the willow trees came laughter, distant, remembered. The wind carried faint notes of a violin, the kind only hearts can hear. He stopped, smiling up at the clouds. The sky remembers, he thought. It always does. And as the first star blinked awake above Willowbrook, the reflection on the lake brightened, a shimmer of light shaped exactly like a bridge. Morning came softly to Willowbrook. A year had passed since the storm, since the night the sky itself had bowed to a handful of children and their impossible courage. Time had rearranged everything. The park's willows had grown heavier, the stage boards newly polished, and posters for another midsummer fair flapped against the lampposts. But Cha-Cha had changed most of all. He had grown taller, quieter, steadier. The boy who once chased applause now moved through the world like a secret melody, visible only to those who listened closely. He still danced, but not for festivals. He danced when he cleaned the classroom, when he crossed the street, when he walked home in the dusk. Every step, a quiet thank you. Every breath, a memory. Miss Dorothy's classroom was emptier now. Choo Choo had moved to an art academy in another town. Clay spent afternoons helping his father in the bakery. And the small space where Suki once sat, a second row, near the window, remained untouched, a tiny museum of absence. Sometimes, when sunlight fell through the glass just right, it painted the desk in the same gold that had once wrapped her hair. Miss Dorothy never moved the chair. She said light needed somewhere to land. Cha-Cha often lingered there after class, sketching new dance ideas in his notebook. He would glance at that empty desk and whisper, still listening, as if the air might answer. On the first anniversary of the festival, a package arrived at the school with no return address. Inside, a small wooden box, the same cherry wood color as Suki's violin case. It contained a folded sheet of paper and a delicate origami crane, painted silver. The letter read, "To my friends in Willowbrook, I found another bridge. It doesn't cross water, it crosses fear. I play in the city orchestra now. Before every performance, I whisper your names to the strings, so they remember how courage sounds. When it rains, I still listen for the rhythm of your dance." Suki. Miss Dorothy placed the crane on the windowsill, where sunlight could touch it first each morning. That night, Cha-Cha walked to the lake and unfolded his notebook. He began writing new choreography, not to perform, but to remember. The piece's title, "The Quiet After Rain." The second Midsummer Festival felt different. Bigger. Louder. But beneath all the sound was something softer, reverence. The town had rebuilt the stage with a plaque embedded into its foundation, "To the children who danced through darkness and taught us how to see." When Miss Dorothy asked Cha-Cha if he'd perform again, he hesitated. "It's not my story anymore," he said. She smiled. "Then share it, so others can find theirs." And so he did. He gathered the younger students, the ones who had watched from the crowd that stormy night, and taught them the steps. He told them what Suki had taught him, "The sky remembers." The night of the performance, he didn't take the stage. He watched from the back, raincoat draped over his shoulders, the faintest drizzle misting the air. When the children lifted their hands in the final pose, the same rainbow shimmered faintly through the clouds, pale, fleeting, but real. The crowd cheered, but Cha-Cha didn't clap. He just closed his eyes and whispered, "She saw it." After the festival, he walked alone to the old bridge where the storm had nearly taken them. The boards had been repaired, each one stamped with the date of that night. He sat in the middle, where the railing still bore faint scratches from Suki's fall. The lake was calm, black glass reflecting the lanterns from the park. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the wooden charm she had given him, the small bridge carved by her father's hands. For a long time he simply turned it between his fingers, feeling its grooves like braille for the heart. Then he dropped it into the water. It didn't sink right away. It floated, catching the moonlight, drifting slowly toward the center of the lake before dissolving into shadow. He whispered, "Some bridges aren't meant to hold us forever. Some just get us to where we need to begin." From the park path, Miss Dorothy watched him, the boy she'd once coaxed into stepping forward, now teaching others to move. She remembered her first day as a teacher, terrified, pretending confidence she didn't feel. Cha-Cha's courage had been her lesson, too. The town had changed because of 5 children. But she knew every town could, if someone dared to shine first. She turned back toward the classroom lights glowing faintly through the rain and whispered, "Keep the sky awake, my stars." Autumn arrived early that year, carrying crisp air and leaves that flamed gold and red. One morning, as the bell rang, Miss Dorothy looked up from her attendance sheet and froze. At the door stood a girl with a violin case and a familiar smile. Suki bowed. "Permission to visit?" The room erupted with gasps, laughter, a few tears. Cha-Cha nearly tripped over a chair getting to her. They didn't hug right away. They just looked at each other, disbelief giving way to something wordless but enormous. Finally, she whispered, "You got taller." He grinned. "You got louder." "I practiced." They both laughed, the kind of laugh that makes time behave strangely, collapsing distance into nothing. She explained she was only in town for a week, a concert tour stopping nearby. The orchestra had given her 3 days off. "I wanted to see the bridge," she said. That evening, they walked together to the lake. The bridge looked smaller now. The world around it is larger. Suki paused halfway across, kneeling to touch the damp wood. "It still creaks the same," she said. Cha-Cha pointed to the water. "Your charm's still down there somewhere." She smiled. "Then it's part of the lake now. Maybe it keeps us both afloat." The moon climbed higher, scattering coins of light across the surface. Without speaking, she unpacked her violin. The first note she played was hesitant, like memory waking. Cha-Cha stepped forward, shoes squeaking on wet boards, and began to move. No crowd. No spotlight. Just the hush of water and wind. Her bow traced every heartbeat, his steps answered every breath. Together they filled the night with something neither time nor distance could steal. When the last note faded, they stood still, water dripping from the edges of the bridge, stars trembling above them. Suki whispered, "I kept your letter." "I never sent one." She smiled. "Exactly." They laughed again, quiet and infinite. The next morning, Suki left before sunrise. No farewell party, no ceremony. Just a folded napkin on the cafe counter where she'd eaten breakfast, a sketch of a bridge, and beneath it, one sentence, "The sky never forgets the children who teach it to sing." Cha-Cha found it later that day and tucked it into his notebook. He didn't cry. He didn't need to. That night, Willowbrook glowed under a gentle rain. Streetlights shimmered through mist, and somewhere a window opened, the sound of a violin drifting faintly across the square. He stepped outside, lifted his face to the drizzle, and danced. Not to remember her. To continue her. Years later, when travelers pass through Willowbrook, they sometimes stop by the park at dusk. They see the rebuilt stage and the plaque, the willow trees leaning like old friends. If the air is quiet enough, they swear they can hear music rising from the lake, a violin's ghostly hum, footsteps on wet boards, laughter carried by wind. And if they stay until the first raindrops fall, they might glimpse it, a faint rainbow forming across the water, so pale it almost isn't there. Almost. Because somewhere in that town, a teacher still lights the lanterns each night. Somewhere, a dancer still moves like rain remembering sunlight. And somewhere beyond sight, a violin answers, patient, certain, eternal.